Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us again for another edition of our Digital Summit Marketing Spotlight. I have here with me today Lauren Goldstein. She's with Annuitas, and she's been a previous speaker with us at the Digital Summits. Excited to talk to her today about B2B marketing, demand gen, and all that's that she's got to share with us on that. So welcome, Lauren.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I love being in front of the audience. I wish we were live, but it's good.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. So Lauren has more than 20 years experience in B2B marketing. She's partnered with some of the world's most respected and innovative companies, including Adobe, Airbnb, American Express, Google, HP, IBM, LinkedIn, Starwood Hotels, Xerox, and plenty more. Her experience includes insights-driven marketing and account-based marketing, often known as ABM, automation strategy, execution, sales, marketing alignment, and other B2B demand gen tactics. Annuitas develops and builds buyer-centric demand marketing programs for clients that drive sustainable business growth. The Annuitas demand process SM approach aligns people, process, content, technology, and data to the buyer and makes your results profitable and predictable. How'd I do?
Perfect.
Is that the elevator pitch? Did I get it?
I think we can cut it down a little bit. You know, I like to say for companies who are needing to drive growth, a lot of times you need to re-engineer the funnel, and we help do that. And it's not a one size fits all, and it's definitely not just playing with one lever that you have at your disposal. It's really kind of looking across everything from your tech and data stack to your content to your processes and the people that are playing really important roles. But yes, that's it, you did good.
Excellent. And so give us some more about your background. Tell us who you are, what your role is at Annuitas.
Well, I mean, if you want to go into the Wayback Machine, I actually started out in direct marketing, right? And at 23 years ago, direct marketing was considered kind of like, the not so sexy, like, not cool form of marketing. Advertising was everything. But what I really loved about direct marketing is having a one-to-one line of access between a brand and a buyer. I love that there was this kind of two-way thing happening. And even as early as like 1998, we were working with tech companies to, imagine this, personalize their experience on the web, right? This is in 1998. And so I really kind of grew up in my career loving having accountability, love having, one-to-one conversations and personalization. Fast forward to answer the second part of your question, what is my role? You've shared with everyone a little bit about what Annuitas does, but my role is as Chief Revenue Officer. I'd also say, kind of one of the chief evangelists to Annuitas, and, more than anything, working with companies of all sizes to help them deliver growth to their business, to create a more scalable funnel, to create better customer experiences, and to really kind of help them hone how they go to market so that it's better for the customer, it's better for the brand, and it's better for the seller. So a quick answer to your question, but my love of really kind of helping connect brands and buyers has been there since day one in my career.
Yeah, and so agencies or consultants who have really honed in on a niche in a process, like in a segment like what you guys are doing, tend to have like a really disciplined process, right? And I noticed that when in looking at your site and talking to others. So tell us about that. Tell us about like what kind of the process and why that is important, and kind of walk us through it.
Sure. I should have the book that our CEO wrote that documents this very kind of detailed playbook. What's that?
Is that available on your site?
It is not available on my site, but if somebody wants to get a copy, they can send me a note as a follow-up, and I'd be happy to make sure they get one.
Perfect.
But listen, I mean, I think that there is a very detailed playbook or process that we follow, but there's a couple core tenets. And the one that is, quite frankly, the most important is putting the customer in the center of the conversation. And listen, that's easier said than done, right? Listen, I think at heart, those of us that are going to be successful in this business of connecting and engaging and converting are those that look at things from an outside-in perspective. Those that say, enough about my agenda, like that'll come second or third, But first and foremost, what is our buyer's agenda? And whether that's somebody that's net new to the business, or whether that's a customer that we've been, working with for years, and we're looking at that next upsell, cross-sell opportunity, it really starts by understanding that buyer. And another kind of component of that in B2B is that there's not one buyer. There's influencers and task forces and decision makers, and sometimes there's even two funnels, right? You've got your influencer funnel, and then you've got your buyer funnel. So it really starts by kind of mapping out that journey. And so our playbook and the way that we engage with the customers that we work with starts by going really, really deep there, and really mapping out the buyer and the buyer journey. And then a key component of it is to create conversation tracks, right? So if you think about digitizing a relationship, you have to know what you want to say first. And I think where a lot of companies get it wrong, and I'll be direct, they think that a technology is going to be some bright, shiny object. They're going to buy some ABM platform or some automation platform, and like, boom, they're done. And that is an important component, but you have to start with that buyer dialogue logic, or that buyer journey. And then you can start to layer in, what are the processes that we need to employ to facilitate a conversation with that buyer? What are the channels and the content pieces that are required? Mm-hmm. Who are the people, right? And I like to say that what we do, it's team sport. This is not a marketing thing. It's a marketing, sales, customer success, product thing. And last but not least, then technology becomes this really important enabler, but it's not the starting point. It's the thing that you hook in after you've figured out what you want to say, who you want to say it to, and at what points in the channel.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually giving a talk on this topic around omnichannel to MBA students a few weeks ago, and walking through a lot of this stuff as well, saying you got to start off really understanding personas, understanding the buyer journey, and understanding where those pain points are and what you're trying to solve for, all the things you say, personalization, et cetera. And it's hard, right? I mean, it's a disciplined process that takes more than just one or two people. So talk a little bit about, how do you bring in all the different parts of a company or organization that are integral to getting that right?
I mean, I think, we always want to make sure that we're not throwing out what an organization has done. And so, I think first is that to kind of like take account for what you do know already. And whether, you're doing this as an initiative within an organization, whether you brought in a partner to help you, it doesn't matter, but start with what you know. We find once we do that kind of audit, sellers know a lot. Your sellers are probably closer to your customers than anybody else. So making sure that you spend time with them, understand what's working and what's not, understand, who's in the room when they walk in it to present. That's a critical first line of defense. I think it goes without saying, like, talk to your customers. They can definitely reveal a lot about what's involved, who's involved, what some of those friction points are to get maybe a new technology or a new service brought into the organization. In a perfect world, we'd like to talk to prospects maybe that didn't choose you, to understand, again, what were those obstacles that you didn't help them to address. I remember years ago working with a company, and what we realized is that there was a champion that we really needed to not only influence, but we needed to equip that champion with information to influence and to sell up. That in this case, that CIO didn't want to talk to this brand necessarily, but if we could empower that, I'll say, champion or advocate to sell up, we were successful at closing new deals. So I think that's, a key component.
And so from soup to nuts, when you walk in to see a client, and all the way to sort of and I'm not even talking about investing in the technology, getting the plan in place to get this right, how long do you typically see that process taking?
I mean, when we work with companies, we tackle it usually over the course of about 2 months. Listen, but if you're running it as a really kind of stealth focused operation, I've seen companies do it in a matter of, days or weeks. I've also seen organizations, twirl in the planning for months and months and months. And I remember from days of the advertising agency world where you like these focus groups and it would take like months or maybe it felt like years and like you would try to like come up with the perfect answer. And the good news is like we don't have to do that anymore. We love to say you got to lead with your best hypothesis. But when you're in a data-driven world, the data is going to ultimately get you to the right answer. Your best hypothesis is a great place to start. Like get it good enough, but don't like get lost in this like abyss of questioning or further vetting. Because at a certain point, you got to just, get out there, but make sure to have the right measurement mechanisms in place so that that measurement allows you to analyze and fine tune to get to the right best answer.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of organizations fall on their own sword. You were mentioned before about the technology. They've either already bought into something, whether they were part of, the Oracle suite or Microsoft 365, and they get stuck with a certain component of it and say, we want to do this, when the data or the insights from the customer says, no, what you really need is Y. I mean, talk about, do you see that a lot?
I mean, we do. I think that, at the end of the day, the data is typically right. But, and this could be a conversation in of itself. How do you make sure that you really have a 360-degree view of the data? I talk to a lot of companies who may be using first touch attribution or last touch attribution to give them the answers. And the good news is that that is partially right. The bad news is that there's a lot of information missing. And so when we're working with companies, we're really taking a look at all of the touch points that are either helping to source a deal or influence a deal. And so by taking a look and having that pervasive view, you really do start to get a better sense of, here's the content we thought was going to be helpful at certain stages in the buyer journey. But listen, we're wrong sometimes. Like some of those hypotheses, I remember for one of the tech companies we were working with, we were convinced that this, specific webinar on a specific topic would be like the best thing ever at getting, leads in top of funnel. And guess what? It did not work. And yet we said, that's so weird though, because we talk to customers, like we know that this is a really important topic and thing. Let's not just like throw it out. Let's just see what happens if we like don't make it the first thing. We moved it to a middle funnel, more of a mid to late nurture piece of content. 40% of the people that attended that webinar converted, right? And so all of a sudden, it wasn't that it was the wrong piece, it was the wrong place in that conversation or nurture. And so you really have to make sure that there is an opportunity to inspect what you expect and to really optimize your go-to-market based on what you need.
And I think that goes to a critical piece that's always kind of thought of last, but sometimes can be the part you maybe you lead with a little bit, which is what's the data going to tell us, and how are we going to build a process into that to optimize? Like, what's the next step to sort of fix? Like you were saying, the hypothesis, we think it's going to be this. Okay, let's build it.
Right.
Kind of get the MVP out there, whatever that is, and then learn from that and optimize it. And so I know that's like the fourth component that you've talked about before, is like, now we're going to talk about optimization and getting that right. So speak about that a little bit.
So again, another conversation I had earlier today, I was calling it like, how do we get that crystal ball effect in the funnel? The gentleman I was speaking to said, like the Holy Grail, like I want the Holy Grail. So a lot needs to happen. Like it is not like a snap our fingers, poof, we have the Holy Grail. I think one of the first and most important requirements is that there is alignment across the organization about what those KPIs are. Marketing can't be measuring one thing and sales is measuring another thing, and customer success something else. There actually needs to be a unified, agreed upon set of KPIs that the whole organization is saying, yes, these are the important factors or triggers in our business. And whether that's about how opportunity stages are defined in Salesforce, all of those things need to really aligned on. The next thing is that, and again, I'm not necessarily going in order, but this is just a checklist of items. Your systems actually have to be integrated. I think one of the challenges that I saw and that I have seen over the years is that marketing's got like their clicks and their opens, and they've got all of their KPIs that they're tracking and monitoring, and sales is kind of looking at pipeline metrics, but then there's this like weird gap in the middle and nobody knows what's going on. And so part of that's around getting alignment on the KPIs, but a lot of the reason why there's that weird gap is because the systems aren't actually even talking to one another. So you need to make sure that web is talking to automation platform, is talking to CRM, and that all of those things are feeding data into your visualization tool or whatever you're using for analytics. We have I'll say a highly customized version of Tableau that we use, but it is feeding from all of our different sources together. So having that integration of your data, having alignment around the KPIs, and then really having the discipline to sit down on a regular basis and take a look at what is working. Yes, multi-touch attribution is easier said than done, but I still think there's companies that are doing a good job of baby stepping their way there. And even though they don't have it completely automated, they really are able to take a look at what's working at what stage in the buyer journey, and what is marketing's role in supporting ultimately sales.
Yeah, and as you're talking about like dashboards and KPIs, man, you could just go down a rabbit hole with that stuff. But how do you get an organization to really agree to those things? Like I've seen dashboards where in our last summit that we did, our last digital summit at home, which we got a digital summit at home coming up again in November and December. So check it out. But we had a conversation around dashboards, and somebody was showing all this stuff. And I said, well, that's not a dashboard. And he was like, yes, you're right. That's not a dashboard. So how do you get organizations to rally around agreeing to what those KPIs are?
I mean, now you're asking hard questions. I mean, this is where change management really comes into play. You and I did not rehearse this, but it's a really good question. I mean, getting everybody on the same page, again, first and foremost about what to measure, that is the hardest part. And so, that's where firms like mine, it's where consultants actually can play a role. Or it can be where in an organization that may not want to go that route, get a cross-discipline task force together. Because there is change management that requires teams from different organizations to come together and agree on things. Because listen, marketing could put together an amazing dashboard, but if it's not measuring the stuff that sales cares about or moving the needle against a revenue number, then who cares? So I think it's really kind of back to your last question, the change management required to get everybody on the same page about what metrics matter to the business is first and foremost. And it's done well when you bring in an outside party to help kind of mitigate and drive alignment. But I've also seen it work really well in organizations who pull together a task force, cross-discipline, and say, listen, this is a requirement. I also hate to say, but it often has to be supported top down, especially,
Sure.
I wouldn't say, in either one of the cases, it's got to be supported top down. It's got to be a priority for the business.
Yeah, and it's like anything where it's collaborative. It's going to have to take everyone coming together and say, who's using this? Who's going to get the insights and the data out of it? And they need to make sure those voices are heard.
Right.
The next question for you. How's 2020 impacted your business? And I know you guys work with a lot of B2B clients, and it's really disrupted a lot of B2B industry. So what are you seeing, and what are clients coming to you with that's you've seen change this year?
I think that almost all of the businesses that we've talked to in the past have had some sort of a digital transformation roadmap. And I think what happened in 2020 was that oh gosh, we need to do that now, especially financial services companies who relied so heavily on this person-to-person interaction to move new business forward. That's gone. So we've heard from a lot of financial services companies that our 5 to 7 year digital transformation initiative, we need to do that now, and we need to speed things up. So I think it's definitely accelerated the sense of urgency. And then, as you can relate to, right, in the business that you're in, live events aren't happening. And that was a really important channel for a lot of companies to meet their next prospect. Mm-hmm. And when that goes away, I think two things have to happen. One, we've all had to really, wrangle in new opportunities to connect with people. So I love that the Digital Summit is doing things like this. Everyone's really pushing to think about new opportunities. But the neglected middle of the funnel, to be really honest with you, I think people are really realizing we can't just, have marketing work at the top of the funnel and sales working at the bottom of the funnel. Like, we need to come together to move people through the middle of the funnel. And my favorite analogy is that, for decades, people have been happy with funnels that look like a martini glass, right? They're big on top. They've spent a ton of money on top, and then sales is going to close what they're going to close. And then there's this huge missed opportunity. And so we are now realizing, and businesses are realizing, that the funnel needs to become more pint glass shaped. So I think that, some industries like financial services in particular are just really racing to take conversations into digital dialogue. But I think all businesses are realizing that there are a lot of kind of missed opportunities and are really advancing their ability to connect in a more personalized way with their prospects and customers.
Yeah, and I think that I feel bad for the companies, not really, but the ones that were dragging their feet on, digital transformation, which you saw a lot on the B2B and the manufacturing side. I have a strong background in the CPG side, and CPGs were ahead of digital transformation a long time ago. So that pivot, if you will, to direct to consumer and working closely with the retailers and inventory and ERP, they were there. The manufacturers and, like you're saying, the events, so many of them relied on, you think about the auto shows, right? Yeah. And the national hardware shows, and all those things were just so critical to that business.
Yeah. I mean, it's been fun to see the pivot, though. I think that it's pushed every industry. Yeah. Like I've got a virtual open house for school tonight with my son. And, every industry has had to really think about how do we recreate that personalized experience? And, you talk about account-based marketing. I know we're running out of time, but in some ways, a lot of the shifts to digital that we're having to make, that we're being more forced to make today than ever, are actually going to advance our ability to speak to individuals and businesses in a more personalized way. So that account-based anything, ABX, we like to say, account-based anything is just going to continue to get better and better and better.
Yeah, I agree. That was going to be my next follow-up question is, do you see 2020, obviously it's impacted the business, but a lot of this is going to stick. I mean, once we get on, say, the other side, and I don't just mean 2020, let's speak specifically to COVID and the pandemic. When we get on the other side of that, whenever that is, a lot of this stuff's just going to stick. It's going to be I know everyone's tired of it, so plug your ears, the new normal, right?
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. I think it has pushed businesses to think better, to think differently, to think in a way that is, trying to replicate that intimate dinner that you had at a conference, or trying to replicate that one-on-one time that you got around a whiteboard. We're all kind of pushing for ways to replicate that in the digital environment. And I think those brands, those businesses that really deliver upon that personalized experience, not just in one place, but as you said, across all channels, across web, so that somebody's interaction with a corporate website will help lead them to the next best thing. And then when they get their newsletter, it's leading again with information that takes them further along that dialogue. And that at that right moment in time, that prospect is flagged to be passed off to an SDR. All of that digital body language that, companies I think have been talking about for a lot of years, but perhaps the strategy and the technology weren't quite married. I think that 2020 and 2021 and beyond, that's the time when the technology, the strategy, again, the people, process, content, and technology, it's when they all converge. And that's what creates great personalization. And quite frankly, that's also what is going to fuel really good account-based marketing. I look at great marketing and account-based marketing somewhat synonymously, like they really are, if done right, accomplishing the same thing.
I couldn't agree more. And on that, let's end on that positive note. I mean, if 2020 gives us anything, perhaps there's a silver lining in what we'll see with ABM and digital transformation in organizations, and we'll come out on the other side better. We always got to, I like to end meetings positive. Lauren, this was a fantastic conversation. Again, Lauren Goldstein from Annuitas. Give her a follow at Lauren On Demand. Check them out. You can find them on the web. And Lauren, it's a pleasure. We hope to see you at one of our digital summits here in the future.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.